Hello everyone, and welcome to our discussion of budgets in Design Manager Professional. My name is Brad, and I'll be hosting a demonstration today. If you have questions during the webinar, feel free to enter them into the questions pane on your GoToWebinar panel. If the question is outside of the scope of today's discussion, please email them to support@designmanager.com. Lastly, if you miss a portion of the webinar or want to review any of our past discussions, you can always go to our Help Center at knowledge.designmanager.com. Select the Webinars menu and go down to Recorded Webinars, and you can see a listing of all of our recent past discussions. Or you can view our YouTube channel at Design Manager Inc., Design Manager INC, where you can have a listing of all of our past webinars and tutorials that you can view whenever you'd like. Now, today's discussion is only for users of the Professional Cloud platform. We discussed budgets in Design Manager Cloud in a previous session, which again you can view on our YouTube channel just by searching for budgets, and you can view the Design Manager budgets in Design Manager Cloud. Design Manager Professional really has two mechanisms for monitoring budgets. One at the project level, which has a robust system to record budgets along with an elaborate system to ensure the budgets are maintained, and at the item level, which is convenient for smaller projects or where the client wants to approve expenditures for individual goods and services, such as not to spend more than $7,000 on the couch or $15,000 on the bar and bar stools. And the item level can even allow you to generate an optional budget document that you can provide to your client. Let's begin with project level budgets first. Let's go to our projects window, and we'll look at the Hilson Pocono home as our example. And I've already pre-configured some of the project to maintain our schedule today, but we'll actually input some information ourselves to gain a deeper understanding of the budgeting process. We'll also be repeatedly reviewing the project level budget analysis report, which you can access by clicking Project Reports, and then you can see Budget Analysis Project Level. Now, since we will be running the report repeatedly, I've added it to our Favorites menu simply by highlighting it on the Reports tree and clicking the Add to Favorites button. This report will allow us to see how, as we enter information, how the budgeting system really evolves. So let's begin by editing our Hilson Pocono home project, and on the project window, we'll go to the Budget tab. I've created one budget entry so far for the outdoor living area, so let's examine this budget entry and see some of its features. So on our budget window, we can see that a budget entry can be set either by location, as is the case in this example, or by sales categories, such as furniture, accessories, etc. You can input an optional note that's going to add some additional information on the budget, such as the purpose of the budget, how to enforce, etc., and that will print on the budget analysis report. Notice that a budget can be set for any and all of our component types, and in this case I have the budget for the outdoor living area for the merchandise at $5,000 and the freight at $500. We can also configure an action that will occur upon reaching the budget. And what are our options here? Well, we have none. Now, that means we're just going to be monitoring the budget manually using our reports, etc. Display warning. This is going to alert the user when we're adding specifications to that project or even project expenses through our accounts payable system that end up exceeding the budget. And lastly, we have the entry for block entry, which is the one that I'm using in this example because we do not want to exceed our budget as we have a hard or a fixed budget. What block will do is simply prevent the user from adding in any new specifications once that budget entry has been exceeded. Further, we have a tolerance percentage. The tolerance can be input that will allow you to configure a percentage within which the action will begin to take effect, allowing us to keep ourselves well abreast of the budget limit. again, since we have a hard fixed budget on our outdoor living area, I have a 10% tolerance, so I'll be warned when I get within 10% of that range, again, keeping me well abreast of when I'm going to be exceeding or reaching my budget limit. Okay, let's go ahead and add a few budgets ourselves to get a greater appreciation of the system. So we'll click on the Add button as indicated by the green plus sign. And like I said, you can create a budget by sales category or by location. And let's do one for our guest bedroom. Again, we have an optional note. How about budget for guest bedroom? In this case, we'll do a warning. Let's put in, how about $10,000 of merchandise, display warning, and for freight, we will do $1,000 as well, and we'll display warning here. Okay, so now we have our guest bedroom budget configured. I'm going to use my OK Add button, which will simultaneously save this budget and keep my budget window up ready for re-entry. And let's do another budget for location. How about my conceptual location of design time? I like all of my time entries to be grouped together on my invoice, so I have a location that I've created just for design time. Budget for design time with warning. And here, let's put in, I don't know, how about 2,500 for time, and we'll display warning here as well. Click OK, Add again. And now how about we do a budget by sales category for, let's say, furniture, for example. This will be our overall furniture budget. And let's put in 15,000 here. We'll display a warning. And how about 1,500 of freight? And if we click OK, just like that, we have all of our new budget entries added as well. And on our budget grid, we can see what type, the code it's associated with, the note, the budget amount, etc. Notice along the bottom, we have a budget total or an overall project budget. Now, if you notice, this is defaulted to the sum of the budgets of all of our existing budget entries, in our case 35,500. Now this is fantastic if we're doing budgets only for sales categories, furniture, accessories, etc., or only for locations. That way, as we add up all the various locations, the total should be the total of the project. But we're using a little bit more of an advanced technique where we have budgets for each of the locations and a simultaneous budget for the furniture. Now that furniture certainly could span both the guest bedroom and living area, so it's not really a total sum of our budgets. Well, I can simply click the manually enter total and change that amount. Let's say to 25,000. And here I could have an overall warning. When I reach the budget total for the project itself, what would I like to do? And how about we say block entry? That way we'll be prevented from adding any new specifications into the system, and that way we can alert the principal or the senior designer, etc. Okay, so now we have our budgets entered as desired. So let's go and see how this really works within the system. I'm going to click on my Items button when I have my Hilson Pocono home highlighted, and that brings us to our specifications window for that particular project. And as you can see, I already have lots of items already entered. Since we have our items, let's take a look at our project budget reports and see how everything's flowing together at this point before we go into seeing how all of the various actions take place. So let's go to our report window, budget analysis by project. Of course, you want to enter the project in itself, Hilson Pocono home, And then we have a range for sales categories and locations. Ranges in Design Manager are only used when you're trying to restrict or narrow the focus of the report. If you leave a range blank, that means Design Manager will include all of the items and not narrow it down or filter it down. Let's take a look first at the format of location summary. Go ahead and click OK. And here's our project level budget analysis report with the location summary. And if we look, we're going to see each of our locations. We can see the notes conveniently listed. Again, a little bit more information about what the budget entry was intended to do. Budgets themselves. We can see the budget of each of the component types for that location and all of our current totals. When the values are listed in black, that means that we are, and a negative variance, I should say, that means that we are under budget or in the black. If we see values in red, as we'll see shortly, that means that we're over the intended budget, and the values will appear both in red and as a positive number. It's also important to remember that the information we're seeing here, the estimate price, for example, is the price to our client, not the cost from our vendor. All the budgets are configured with the client's perspective, so we'll be talking about prices. And further, the estimate price, that's actually the value that we input on our specifications, while the actual price is going to be what is recorded when we truly make the client invoice for those items. And as you can see, that column is blank right now because we haven't invoiced anything to the client. Now, I purposely did not include a budget for the master bedroom to show that Design Manager still will take into consideration items that have not been included in a budget range, and it puts those under the non-budget designation. These non-budget items will be evaluated against the overall project budget, and they'll always be over budget because we don't have a budget for them, of course. And then as we scroll through the report, we can see all of the total budget plus non-budget for the project. And then we have a few convenient charts or graphs as well. So we can see out of the information that's already been budgeted, where is our distribution of that budget? How is our current estimated values filling? Well, we have over 50% that's not budgeted yet. And then within the budgeted range, we can see where the locations, where the estimated prices are by location. And as we invoice our client, we'll actually see our invoice chart appear as well. Now the report can be run by sales category as well. In other words, what is the genre or classification of the goods and services? So we'll run the exact same report with the sales category summary. And we can see we have all of our budget information is on our furniture, as we created a single entry for our furniture budget. And we can see our budget amounts, the prices, and the variance. Right away, we can see that we're going to have an issue with our furniture budget because we've exceeded that by just under $4,000. Again, if we're over budget, it's going to appear in red as a positive number, and if we're under budget, it'll appear in black as a negative number. And then we have all of our non-budget sales categories as well. And just like the location version, we're going to total all that information up, and we'd have our charts, etc. Now, we talked about all of those actions that occur when we hit a particular budget or approach a budget. Let's see how that works when we're actually entering in specifications. So let's imagine we're going to add a new item for the outdoor living area. So we click on our Add button on our specifications window, item for outdoor living area. Location, of course, would be outdoor living area. And let's imagine that the cost of this is $3,000 and we're going to charge $3,900. And if we click OK, we can see Design Manager is alerting us that we cannot continue, that our price has exceeded our merchandise budget for the project and the location of outdoor living area and even the amounts. And if we look on our budget analysis by location, we can see that yes, if we added an item for over $3,000, we would certainly exceed that budget. So Design Manager is blocking us because we have that hard blocked budget action. And again, now the user could, of course, alert the designer or the principal or the lead designer on the project to see what to do next, which is the very nice facet of the block action. Let's add another one. How about we add an item into the guest bedroom? Because, again, we have plenty of room on our guest bedroom. We have a budget of $10,000 for merchandise, and we haven't even yet exceeded $5,000. So let's say this is item for guest bedroom. Location, there's our guest bedroom. Let's call this furniture. And how about this is somewhere maybe $2,000 in cost, and we'll charge $2,600. So we should be able to proceed here because our budget on our guest bedroom is far less than, which can certainly encompass our $2,600. But no, now we're warned. It's saying that the estimated price to exceed the merchandise budget for Project Hilson, of the sales category. Well, I'm only being warned in this case, so my item does get saved, and if we look at our budget analysis by sales category, remember, we're already over that furniture budget, so adding more items is going to put us deeper and deeper over budget. But since our furniture budget was warning only, it did allow me to proceed. So that's the difference between blocked and being warned. That's fantastic. So that handles a lot of our specification entry, but what about bills coming in? That's to certainly be taken into consideration when the budget is being approached or exceeded. And Design Manager handles that as well. Let's go over to our Accounting tab, and we'll go to Bills and Invoices. Let's imagine we just received a pretty substantial shipping charge for our Hilson project, and it was sent from a third-party shipper, and we're going to record that as an operating expense joined back to the project. So on our Vendor Deposits, Invoices, and Operating Expenses window, we're going to click the Add button. We'll select Expense. Let's put our vendor in from ShipHawk. Invoice number, invoice date, today's date is just fine for our example, shipping on outdoor area. Click our Add button to get to our account vendor invoice distribution window, and since we want to cost it back to the project, we'll use our project related option. Sales category, how about freight? Let's say it cost us, so I don't know, $1,500 for all that furniture. Project, of course, is the Hilsons. This is going to be freight. Yes, I'd like to update my percentage. Let's put this into the outdoor living area. Our description for our eventual invoice to the client. Shipping on outdoor living area furniture. And we can see that since our cost is $1,500, we're marking up our freight at 10%. Ultimately, we'll be charging the Hilson $1,650 for this shipping bill. Click OK, and OK again. Now I can simply go ahead and post my invoice. But I am blocked here as well. The estimated price is now exceeding the freight budget for the Hilson project by $500 with our 10% tolerance. So Design Manager is, again, not only checking us as we're adding specifications in, but even bills that may come in that are not included in the specifications. So I get blocked here. I can leave my bill, my invoice on my new tab, but now I need to go discuss it with the user who's in charge of that particular project. Fantastic. Okay, so those are how we can configure our budgets per project, but I may want the same set of budgets to be automatically distributed or defaulted to every new project that I create. Well, I can certainly do that. If we go to our File, Company Information and Settings window, notice that we have a tab for Budget. And I have created 4 sales category budgets that I always want my new projects to be configured for upon creating them. I want to monitor accessories, floor coverings, furniture, and lighting. Now in this case, I have amounts of 0 because I have no idea what each project will be budgeted at. They certainly could be different, as we all know. But I want to have those entries already created for me so my designer or design assistants know that they have to go in and fill in the budgets upon reaching the agreement with the client. To put that into practice, let's go back to our Project tab, Projects button. Let's say we have a brand new client. We'll just use Test as an example here. Just by creating a new project, Design Manager is already going to populate those budgets from the company defaults for me. And then I can go in and edit each one with the exact budget amounts once we agree upon that with the client. Further, I may have created my budget entries after I've been using Design Manager for quite some time, and I want to start implementing them on my active projects. If we look at our Carter's Pennington home, we can see that I don't have any budgets yet configured, but I can easily do so. I can click Default from Company button, and Design Manager will ask, would you like to bring in the company defaults and replace any budgets that I may currently have, which of course we have none. And if we hit yes, just like that, I've created those 4 sales category budgets based upon the company settings automatically. And then I can fill them in for the Carter's project as well. So if you utilize the budget system, particularly if it's very standardized within your company, having those company budgets set up first really makes the data entry accurate and as consistent as possible. Okay, that's a very good overview of project level budgets. Now let's go to the second budgeting stage where we have item level budgets. Now item level budgets are perhaps a simpler concept, yet still a highly effective way of monitoring your budget. And obviously the item level budgets will be input on each of our items. And further, item budgets provide another function in that we can create a preliminary budget document which we can optionally provide to our client when initially agreeing upon the scope of the project. So again, I've already pre-configured some information for our examples today using the Hilson wine cellar. And if we look at the items for that project, you can see I have some very, very generic items entered in to the system. And that's quite common. As the budget becomes finalized, I can input a lot of the extra detail as the design process proceeds. Let's take a look at our side chairs as an example. All the budget information gets entered right on the Item tab on the right-hand side. And you can see that we have a quantity of 4, so we have 4 side chairs. The unit budget for each is $525, and the total budget would be $2,100, of course. Design Manager conveniently updates that information for you. So if I change the quantity, notice that the extended budget increases, or if I change the unit budget, it increases as well. And the reverse is true also. So if I change my extended budget back down to 25, Design Manager will do the math for us. So let's take a look at this budget document in Design Manager. If we go back to our project reports, here's our budget report, again, which is located under the project management in alphabetical order, but I have attached it to my favorites. I can input the project, I can optionally include pictures on this document, and I have conveniently the ability to get to my arrange or layout window. This allows me to select where I want a particular location to appear on the document, or how I want individual items within the location to appear. And I can rearrange simply by dragging or dropping. And for those of you familiar with Design Manager, you know that this is the same window that you can access from your new proposal window and your new invoice window. And that arrangement is always flowing throughout the system. Let's take a look at our budget report. And here's our budget document. Again, simple yet very professional in that we have all of our images located, displayed for us. We have a very basic description, which is quite common at this stage, the unit budget, quantity, and our extended budget as well. And here's our 4 items that we have entered in already. But notice I don't see a budget for my project total, nor do I have an overall budget listed in the header of the document. Well, that's because I haven't entered one yet. So let's go ahead and do so. So if we go back to our Hilson wine cellar, edit, back to our budget tab. Unlike the Hilson Pocono home, we don't have any budgets entered. But first, let's put in an overall project budget by clicking our manually enter total. And let's just say it's $25,000. Click OK. Let's rerun the report to see what differences have now been created. So first, we can see our overall budget listed nicely highlighted in bold on the document itself. And if we scroll down to the bottom, we can see our project total, and we're listing a unallocated budget of $25,000. It's unallocated or remaining budget because, yes, that's the project level, but we haven't filtered it down to each of the locations yet. So let's go ahead and add some more complexity. Back to our projects window, edit our wine cellar again, back to our budget tab. Let's create a budget entry for the wine cellar. Budget for wine cellar. And let's imagine that we have $15,000 for the wine cellar itself. Click OK. OK again. And now we have another layer of sophistication into our budget. Back to our report, and let's take a look at how that addition has changed the document. So now we can see we're grouping by wine cellar. We have our wine cellar total of $15,000, and then we have all of our budget entries being summated and then evaluated against the wine cellar total. So we know that we still have $5,400 in that location itself. And out of the entire project, we still have $10,000 that's remaining or unallocated, because we have $15,000 for the wine cellar out of a total of $25,000. So perhaps we have $10,000 to either further contribute to the wine cellar, or perhaps there'll be another area in the project that we want to allocate those funds. So this becomes a very nice living document that can be created very early on in the preliminary stages when dealing with the client, to provide them with sort of a framework of what we're envisioning for the design process for the entire project. Budget document. Okay. Now, let's take a look. We saw our budget analysis at the project level. Let's use our third document of our budget analysis by the item level. So we're going to print this report. Again, we have all of our ranges. Ranges are only used to filter our information. And let's do our location summary version of this report. And here we're going to see one line for each of our locations within the project, the amount, the sum of all of the items that have a budget within that particular location, our estimated values, our actual values, which will again be done when we invoice the client, and the variances. Plus, we'll see our budget evaluated against non-budgeted items as well. And as we begin and progress through the design process, we're going to be adding in our true cost and pricing information. So let's go through, and I'll quickly add in some costs and prices to those items for our wine cellar, and we can see how the report evolves as well. Let's go to our specifications for that project. Start with our dining table, and I'll just throw in some costs and freight for each of them. Let's go to our side chairs. I'll use our next button again to get to our sconces. And finally our chandelier. And there we go. And I've just very rapidly filled in some cost and pricing information for all of our items. And now let's go and print the report again. And this time let's do the location detail, which is going to show not only the wine cellar itself, but all of our items within that particular location. So here we can see the quantity. This is our true estimated price that I just typed into to our specifications window. The actual information, of course, will populate when we invoice the client. And here's our budget information. So we can see I am under budget for all of my items except for the side chairs at this point. And there's a few different formats. So here is the location detail, which lists each item. We saw the location summary, which we'll look at again now that we have some information input. So now we have one line per location, but we can see both our estimated values that I just typed into the specifications against the budget and our variance. So a very simple way to look at the project per location. There's another format known as the simple, which, if we go to our simple by location, is a almost internal version or a company version of our budget document. This just lists each of the items within their particular location and the budget amount we've input so far. Sort of a consolidated version of the nicer, more professional looking budget document that's intended for the client. This is more for internal use. And each of those then have corresponding formats for sales categories. So we have simple by sales category summary, and sales category detail. Let's take a look at the sales category detail just as an example. And so now all of our items are within our furniture, except for our sconces, which is within the lighting. And we can see how Design Manager is evaluating those on each sales category as well. What it does not do, when you're looking at item budgets, I am not looking at my total overall project level budget. So that $25,000 that we input on our budget tab for the Hilson wine cellar does not get evaluated on these reports. We're looking at only the budget items themselves. It's very important to remember that when reviewing the two various reports. And lastly, we see that all of our actuals are 0. as I stated a few times, that information gets input when we actually make a client invoice for our project. We'll just tag them all. Wine cellar invoice. And notice if we print and post our client invoice, and then rerun our budget analysis, let's take a peek at how that invoiced actual column is now filled in as well. So the actual amount is what we truly invoice the client. So Design Manager really provides you with 3 different amounts to which you can analyze your budget. The budget itself, of course, the estimated value, which we type into our specifications, versus what we finally truly invoice the client. So we really have a fantastic way of not only budgeting each of our projects, but monitoring on what we assumed we'd be charging the client versus what we truly actually charge them or finally invoice them. That brings us to our end of our discussion on budgets in the professional cloud program. And we saw that Design Manager allows you to create the budgets at both the project and item level, and the project budgets further has that system of actions that occur upon reaching the budget, while the item level may not have the system of warnings, but can be used to conveniently create detailed budgeting for the particular goods and services within the project, from when we can make our budget document to provide to the client, and internally monitor our budget on both the estimated and actual values against that budget itself. With that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today, and I hope that you join us again in the near future.